What is up, movie friends? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast. This is Anthony.
This is James, and today we're going to do an episode on The Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short. We felt we had to do a special episode on Wall Street movies since we're currently sending AMC and GME to the moon, baby. Let's go. This phenomenon in the stock market in the last week forced us to make this kind of episode. We're not financial experts. We know close to nothing about stocks and trading.
We invest a little bit, but I'm
just
not.
A little bit.
I look at it twice a month.
But that being said, AMC and GME to the moon, baby. Let's go.
It's amazing because I don't think business or the economy or anything financial has become such a pop culture phenomenon ever.
Neither, yeah.
And I think it's an amazing moment where so many young people are just like trying to figure out what's going on. They're very curious, and it's become like the new thing of the moment. And it's something finance and Wall Street investing are things that can be very vital to you as an adult, but we don't learn about any of this when we're young.
Never learn it.
Don't learn about it in school, like taking out loans, what a mortgage is, what it's like to invest, like any of these skills or tools that we could use or that corporations can use against us. And so I think it's important for young people to educate themselves.
And I think the phenomenon of the last week in the stock market is going to have pros and cons, obviously. But one of the main benefits I think will happen is a lot of young people, young millennials and Gen Z people are going to understand or learn what investing is and try to learn more about it and try to prepare for their futures more, because it is really important. Like you said, we don't learn about any of this. And I think these two movies are a testament to how the people who are in this business on Wall Street, they don't want you to know what's going on there. They try to keep it a secret because it's there's a ton of money there. There's a sea of cash.
It's like McConaughey says in Wolf of Wall Street, it's that Fugazi. It doesn't exist. And everyone's in that industry to make money off of us.
And these movies that we're going to talk about show you that they want to keep it a secret. In Wolf of Wall Street, we obviously get more of a fantastical, like fun roller coaster ride of a story, whereas in The Big Short, we see the repercussions really of what's going to happen and what happened in 2008 with that crisis.
Yeah, Wolf is about the lifestyle of someone in that world, and then The Big Short is the fallout and repercussions of the damage that can be done in the industry.
Think these movies go so well together because...
And we didn't do Wall Street on purpose.
Yeah,
I
don't think a lot of people have seen Wall Street.
Yeah. Young people.
Yeah, the tones of these movies go so well together because they're so different despite being about very similar topics. And
exactly.
We'll get more into that.
And they both got great filmmakers, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about these movies because I love them both. They both blend a lot of humor and drama into these films, and they're both a great time.
But real quick, if you want to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, the best thing you can do is go to patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. There are links everywhere. You can find it on our profiles. Become a patron of the show. You can do a $2, $5, $10 investment in basically our stock.
And we use the money we get from Patreon to invest in our show. We're not like spending the money on ourselves. We're putting everything into the show. Like if you watch our show online on YouTube, you see every month or so that our set gets better. We have new microphones, we're getting new lights, and we're decorating. And we're using everything we get from Patreon to invest in this business. So we definitely need help from all of you fans and listeners, and we appreciate everyone who's already on our Patreon.
Even the $2 tier, that's a ton of money for us in the long haul. And think of it, like you said, we approach the show, it's like a stock to us. So we're trying to invest in it and make it as good as possible. Mm-hmm. And also, you get perks like behind-the-scenes views of upcoming episodes, some videos. Top-tier patrons get personalized videos sent to them and shout-outs on the podcast. The $5 patron, you get a video sent to you. So there's a lot of cool perks that we're trying to do for all you people. And if you're already on Patreon, thank you so much. First week of every month, you get the monthly shout-out. But again, Patreon, if you want to support us. I think the biggest difference between The Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short, one's a comedy and one's more of a tragedy with some comedy elements to it and some funny lines. And like The Wolf of Wall Street captures that mood and like that fraternity of this insane brokerage firm. And whenever the movie's about to explain stocks or anything relating to finance, they basically just say, you know what, screw that. Who cares? It doesn't matter anyways. Here's Leo DiCaprio holding a monkey. Whereas with The Big Short, Adam McKay really wants the audience to try to understand as much as they can what's going on because of what happened in 2008. And he does this with comedy, but also with the elements of like Selena Gomez and Anthony Bourdain and Margot Robbie in their scenes trying to explain to you the nuances of the situation.
Yeah, he's really smart where he dumbs it down and tells us what's happening in layman's terms, but he also has famous celebrities do it for us to keep us more engaged, because obviously that's watching Margot Robbie in a bathtub, you're going to listen to whatever she says. And also they do things like that Jenga piece scene with Ryan Gosling to help explain the different mortgages that were involved in the collapse. And then just like Wolf of Wall Street, The Big Short breaks the fourth wall a lot. In order to get our attention, it engages the audience and makes us pay attention more, because we're not just watching the actors interact with each other. Once the actors interact with us, it makes us want to really pay attention.
And to reiterate, The Wolf of Wall Street is about the lifestyle. It's really just about Jordan Belfort. We're following his character, the whole movie, his ups, his downs, the entire film, and it's this wild ride of drugs and money and illegal activity. Whereas The Big Short, we really get to see a sense of these characters, because I think what Adam McKay does so well is he humanizes these hedge fund managers, because a lot of the times you think of a hedge fund manager and you think it's just some greedy, pocket-hungry guy trying to steal your money, whereas, we're talking about the characters that Christian Bale plays, Steve Carell plays. These guys, they're just trying to make an honest living, trying to make as much money as they can. That's their job, and you can see the turmoil that they're going through because they know what's about to happen and they're betting for it to happen, and they profit immensely from it, as well as understanding that a lot of people just lost their jobs, just lost their homes, just lost all their savings, despite the fact that they're making a ton of money off of it.
Yeah, and so you can say that what they did was kind of villainous in a way, but they bet on this because they knew it was going to happen. So they're like, okay, the ship's going down. We might as well get one of those lifeboats while we're here and try to make something out of it, because it's not like we can stop it from happening. And it was just fascinating because The Big Short revealed that a lot of people had no idea this was going to happen. Only very few people knew. And those few people, as we see in this film, when they tried to tell others in the industry about it, they were ostracized and they were laughed out of their rooms, and they were told that they were crazy and completely wrong, where obviously nefarious behavior led to the collapse. But we thought that I kind of assumed like all these guys knew about this and let it happen, but it was just fascinating to see that so many had no idea it was going to happen.
Yeah, I think when Adam McKay takes you basically to like ground zero when they're in Miami and they're talking to those bankers who give out those loans, and they're so clueless about what they're doing. They're just giving loans away like hotcakes, and they don't understand what they're contributing to this giant collapse that's about to happen. And you can just imagine that there's thousands and thousands of people just like them that are giving out all these loans to anyone who wants one, and they don't know that they're going to fail, and they're making tons of money off it in the meantime. Yeah. They don't realize what's going to happen.
Yeah, I can explain real quick exactly what happened with the collapse, which The Big Short shows, and that's an example of what happened. Essentially was banks began issuing mortgages to Americans, many of which were very risky loans, because the people who applied for these loans, they had poor credit or had like low annual salaries, and they basically had a very poor chance of being able to pay off the loan. There was a likelihood they were going to default on their loan. But the banks eliminated their risk in issuing these loans by selling these loans to tranches. And on top of that, they received big commissions every time they issued a loan to someone. And so they took all these bad bank mortgages and sold them to tranches. And these tranches are basically piles and compilations of bad, risky loans that are most likely going to default. And so the tranches then created bonds out of these loans. And a bond is 100% money, cold hard cash. It'll never depreciate in value and can always pay out, and it gains in value over time. There's no way a bond can ever default or lose its value, so it's a sure thing. And so once these bonds were created out of these horrible mortgage loans, the bonds were then sold to both investors, like people who invest, and both the banks. And so the banks bought as many of these bonds as they possibly could, because the bonds, like I said, are cash. They're never gonna default or lose value. So the bonds doubled their commission by making a commission on the poor mortgages, the risky mortgages, and then buying the bonds that were made out of these risky mortgages. And so the banks doubled their earnings and took no risk at all. And over time, this bubble grew and grew and grew. And as the default rate rose in America, it rose from 1%, which is pretty safe and a balanced default rate on loans. It rose to 8%, a default rate of 8% in America. And that is what caused the bubble to essentially collapse and basically destroy the economy.
Thanks for putting that into layman terms for us all to kind of understand, Anthony.
No problem.
That was really nice of you.
I tried.
This episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Get 15% off and free shipping using coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout. Again, Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 15% off and free shipping. Manscaped has been amazing. They keep sending us stuff that we got closets full of all their shirts and deodorizers and colognes, and the lawnmower groomer is amazing. It's got a light on it. It's waterproof, 8,000 RPM buzzer clippers. These are the best clippers I've ever used in my life. Guys, you got to get on manscaped.com, get their products, get their groomers. Fellas, ladies, for the men in your life, get them gifts from manscaped.com. The best products, I guarantee it. We love everything they send us. I stand by it. I'll take it to my grave. I'll take the lawnmower to my grave. Coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 15% off and free shipping.
And so Adam McKay crafted this brilliant movie which detailed what happened in the collapse in a digestible way for mainstream audiences, because so many people, you don't understand what's happening in Wall Street and with all these loans and stuff. It's very confusing. So he articulated it really well with this movie.
First up, we have The Wolf of Wall Street, which was released in 2013. Written by Terrence Winter, based on the book by Jordan Belfort. Directed by Martin Scorsese. Based on the true story of Jordan Belfort, from his rise to a wealthy stockbroker living the high life to his fall involving crime, corruption, and the federal government.
This film, I think, is a spiritual sibling to Goodfellas. It has a lot of similarities in both the character storyline and all, as well as how Scorsese tells the story. And his use of narration, especially in this film, reminds you a lot of Goodfellas, like Henry Hill. Breaking the fourth wall a lot like Henry Hill, addressing the audience. And then the use of freeze frames often. Scorsese has always used freeze frames, but in Goodfellas and in this film, I think is the most heavy use of freeze frames. So I think that he brought that energy he had when he made Goodfellas and put it into this film, because I feel like it has that same energy, same humor, the same stakes, and the same epic storyline that film has.
Yeah, and both based on true stories, based on books and memoirs of Henry Hill and Jordan Belfort. And yeah, I definitely get that too. And also, this movie, it's so fun and wild and insane. And I remember when I was like 13 years old, and I read the Wolf of Wall Street article in like one of our older brothers' Maxim magazines, and I was like, I had no idea what the stock market was or how it worked or what was going on, but I just remember reading these crazy stories about this Wolf of Wall Street firm on Wall Street, and it's nuts. And then when you finally see the movie come out, and I couldn't believe the things I was seeing, because Jordan Belfort says that despite all the debauchery on camera and what's going on, he says his life was even crazier and what happened was even more nuts, and they couldn't even film what really took place. And so this is a crazy toned down version of what this firm was like. It was basically a fraternity, but like if you think about it, there's probably never existed an entity of the magnitude of Stratton Oakmont and what it was like in its prime and its heyday, because yeah, there have been debauchery and fraternity situations and all this, but you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of cash flowing through this tiny community and environment. You can just imagine what it was like in its heyday.
That's amazing that you pointed out that the film is toned down for what the real story is, which is unbelievable, because this movie was banned in 5 countries because of its graphic content. So that's just insane. I can only imagine what that guy's life was like. And a lot of people with this movie, they kind of have critics of this movie believe that Scorsese is glorifying the behavior of these characters and the behavior of Jordan Belfort, but that's not at all what he's doing. What he's doing is he's telling the story. And in order to tell a story, you have to tell the highs and the lows. And there's a lot of highs in this movie, and the characters are doing horrible things and also having a lot of fun. And as audience members, we're having fun with them, because we're along on the ride with them. But then also Scorsese is completely honest, not with just the highs, but with the lows, because Jordan Belfort falls real low in this movie by the third act of the film. So it's not glorifying, but for Scorsese, the only way to tell the story is to tell it honestly. And so to be honest, you have to tell them both the highs and the lows of the character.
Yeah, it's a story. It's not like Martin Scorsese is saying like everyone should do this, or just because you like Wolf of Wall Street. I've heard so many people criticize just because you like the movie, it means you want what happened to go on. And
it's like if you like a serial killer movie, doesn't mean you like when people get murdered.
Yeah, we all know when you watch this movie and you're watching Jordan Belfort, this character, you understand this is a loathsome character. He's a monster. He has all the worst traits you can think of in a person, but amplified to 100. He's morally corrupt bankrupt and ethically. He's wildly selfish. He's overly arrogant. He'll do anything to make money. And we spend pretty much the entire film with this guy, watching his life and his storyline. And we've never really seen too much interaction with his children, just a couple quick scenes. We don't really see anything positive going on in his life. It's always Jordan doing illegal or obscene activities.
Or getting messed up.
Yeah, and the thing is, he ended up costing his investors $200 million. So he cost a lot of people a ton of money. He destroyed lives, and he went to prison for he got sentenced for 4 years and ultimately served 22 months in prison. But like, this guy did so many horrible things, and it's not glorifying it at all. It's just a story, like you said.
And yeah, he didn't serve that long of a prison sentence, but he also, in order to get that short term, he gave up all of his friends. So he destroyed the lives of all of his friends that he was very close with and worked with. So I'm sure he regrets having to do that as well, and I'm sure that weighs heavy on him. And so it ended up that things did not work out for him, even though he didn't have a long prison term.
And what's nuts and what we learn when we hear about all these corrupt Wall Street people is, even though they go to prison and they serve those short sentences in their rich prisons playing tennis, they still make out on the other end. I mean, Jordan Belfort right now, this guy has a highly successful podcast. He's been doing public speaking events. Who knows how much money he gets paid for those? So the guy, it's not like, yeah, he went through a tough time. I'm pretty sure he's sober now too, but like, the guy is still a very wealthy multimillionaire on top of the world in a way. Obviously not like he was in charge of his own brokerage firm, but the guy is still caking, and it shows that like a lot of these Wall Street guys, they just get basically a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, and the thing with him, I'm not surprised he became successful again, because he's a natural salesman. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, Scorsese's such a genius filmmaker and storyteller, and I would say the best shot in the entire film is the last shot, when Jordan is doing his presentation to that crowd, and he's asking person after person to try and sell them the pen. And what Scorsese does is, after Jordan goes to a few people in the front row, he takes the camera away from the attention of DiCaprio, and then he pans the camera on a crane, and he just puts it on the audience. And you can see the faces of these rows of people, and they are just focused entirely with attention on what Jordan is saying, because that translates the entire, I think, theme of the film, and it's the desire to be wealthy, the desire to have money. Mm-hmm. So many people have it, and that's essentially what people in Wall Street are driven by, and what many people are driven by, and these people in this audience, they're so fascinated and enthralled by this person because he achieved so much success, and everyone wants success in some way. And so I think that it's the perfect shot for the movie right there. Yeah, it shows Scorsese's brilliance.
Yeah, and although this guy went to prison and he's a horrible drug addict and recovering, these people still want to be just like him. You see that in their eyes. They're like, I wish I was Jordan Belfort.
Yeah, they have that hunger in their eyes.
Watching him try to sell that pen with people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Jordan Belfort, the character, when we're getting the fourth wall breaks, when Leo's directly talking to the camera, we learn about his ridiculous drug habits and how he's constantly taking drugs all day, starting in the morning when he wakes up. And then he's talking about his favorite drug, and you think it's going to be cocaine because my favorite drug, this is the one that gets me the most high. And he's breaking up cocaine. He's like, it's not that, it's money. And this guy will do anything to get money, and he gets the ultimate high from cash, which is saying a lot because the guy does morphine too. So he's a crazy drug addict, but drugs don't even do it for him enough. He needs the money is the biggest drug to him.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the drug use in this movie is just so much fun and ridiculous. And
don't do drugs, but insane.
Scorsese portrays it in such a crazy way. You've never seen it done like this before. And I think like my favorite scene is when he's high on Quaaludes after he took too many because of the delayed response from them.
Oh my God.
And then he crawls across the parking lot, and he opens the Lamborghini door with his foot, it's so much fun. It's a great bit of physical comedy, and apparently DiCaprio improvised the scene completely, and he could only do one take because he actually injured his back doing it. This episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast is sponsored by movieposters.com. Use our special coupon code Raiders15 to get 15% off your order today. Movieposters.com is the #1 place to get your movie posters online today. Don't go on Amazon. I know it's free shipping, but the quality is not very good. Movieposters.com has the highest quality posters. Their printing is amazing. All of the posters on our set, if you're watching on YouTube, they're fantastic. They sent them to us for free. We love this company. Use our coupon code Raiders15 to get 15% off your order today. Again, Raiders15 to get 15% off from movieposters.com.
I had no idea how talented of a physical actor Leo DiCaprio was. Like, obviously, he does a lot of physical acting in The Aviator,
The Revenant,
and The Revenant, but like this scene, this is before The Revenant, though. And
Yeah.
the first time I saw this, I was like, "Holy crap, Leo is an amazing physical actor," because this scene's insane. And there's so many drug scenes, obviously, but like the cerebral palsy phase that he enters in, and then just trying to drag to the car and everything. It's absolutely beyond me how Leo DiCaprio didn't win an Oscar for this role, because I think Leo at this point in his career, like since like maybe 2010, since like after Inception, he completely commits to his roles immensely on like a Daniel Day-Lewis level almost, where he only picks like a role a year, really. He's only doing like one movie a year at this point in his career, and I think it's because he puts so much into the role. Not saying that he does method acting like Daniel Day-Lewis, but I think he puts so much energy and so much of his time into these characters and these roles to make them as good as possible.
Yeah, you're right. He's not a method actor, but you can't deny the amount of work he must put into it.
And especially Wolf of Wall Street, there is an insane amount of dialogue in this movie. An insane amount of dialogue, a lot of it which was ad-lib and improvised, which is, again, why it has that same energy you were talking about with Goodfellas, because that's why it's so realistic and the dialogue's so fun and entertaining. But Leo has so many lines. I can only imagine how many lines he has, and he's screaming, he's high energy all the time, and he's also acting like he's drugged out all the time. So intense physical role. It's incredible.
And he happily put himself into like embarrassing situations, like that candle scene and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's
Just
naked
like,
in so many
like
scenes.
ridiculous situations. And so like his commitment to the craft is amazing. And I think the reason why he didn't win for this film is because of the raunchiness of it and just the nature of it.
I think so too.
You know what I mean? I think Academy voters were like, okay, he's amazing in this movie, but I mean, this is ridiculous. So I think that's why he didn't win.
And then Jonah Hill is in this movie, and he's phenomenal in this role as Donnie. He may be more morally corrupt than Jordan Belfort is, Donnie, because he takes what Jordan does and like somehow puts it to another level, and he's still addicted to drugs. And after Jordan's clean, saying how much he loves it. And Jonah Hill is exceptional in this movie, and he took the SAG minimum of $60,000 to work with Martin Scorsese in this role. And I know a lot of people think that like you're underappreciating Jonah Hill as an actor, but you gotta remember, when you have Leonardo DiCaprio on a movie, the guy's making $25 million, and then think of a movie set or a movie as like you have a budget. It's like a sports team. You can only pay this guy so much if you're paying this guy that much. So it's not a slight on Jonah Hill. I know a lot of people kind of interpret it that way. It's just Jonah Hill accepted that willingly to work with Martin Scorsese, so they both get something out of it.
Yeah, and the movie's getting made because DiCaprio's in it.
Yeah.
That's the power of his name. It gets movies made because of the success all of his movies have had. Except for The Beach, every movie has been a gigantic success. This guy's movies don't fail. The Revenant made over $200 million. It's insane.
It's not making that without Leonardo DiCaprio in it. And
Yeah.
Leo's a commodity, but Jonah Hill, yeah, he was in Moneyball, which was very good, and he got an Oscar nomination for it, but that doesn't mean he can start demanding $10 million for a movie.
Yeah, because in Moneyball, he's very good, but he's still very reserved in that film. He had never showcased like great, incredible character acting before. And so this film, I think, was him auditioning to the world himself as a great actor.
Exactly.
And even though he didn't get paid a lot, he became a leading actor after this.
Yeah.
Now he leads movies. Before he was always a supporting character or one of a pair, and now he's a lead. You know what I mean? So that's what happens when you get a movie like this. Again, it wasn't his first nomination for acting, but it was a high-profile role, and I think that his career benefited in the long term because of this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, who wouldn't want to work with Martin Scorsese? And I'm sure he would have worked for free if he could have. And I think that's just a humble move by Jonah Hill in understanding what a role like this could propel your career, because it obviously paid off for him. And now he's, like you said, a leading man in a ton of movies.
Yeah, and he was so insistent on getting the role that initially, because he was a famous person and he was Oscar nominated, so people like Scorsese knew he could act. And Scorsese wanted to have a meeting with him to discuss the role. Because oftentimes, like stars, they don't audition anymore. Once they get to a certain level, they don't have to audition, and they'll just have meetings with producers and filmmakers, and then they'll be like, okay, let's see how this works out. I think you can do a good job with this. Like Chris Nolan didn't audition McConaughey for Interstellar, you know what I mean? They just have a meeting. And Jonah Hill requested that instead of doing a meeting, he wanted to audition for the role in front of Scorsese by reading scenes for him. And so you could tell the commitment that Hill had to not just getting the role because he was a famous actor, but getting the role because he deserved it and earned it. And you can see that so much in his performance. And my favorite part of his performance is his voice, his accent.
Yeah.
And the accent was something he actually kept secret. He didn't tell Scorsese or DiCaprio or the producers that he was doing this funny accent. And he was actually kind of worried how everyone would react to the accent. And the first scene he shot was with Spike Jonze in the scene as well. And he goes to Spike Jonze before filming. He's like, "Hey, I have this accent. Can I test it out on you and see if it's good?" And so he tried the Donnie accent out on Spike Jonze, and Spike Jonze was like, "That's great. You have to do it for sure." And so Jonah Hill did the accent in his first take, and Scorsese loved it.
And he does a lot of interesting scenes in this movie too, like the fishbowl scene, and he wanted to actually ingest the goldfish for real and eat it because he wanted every part of this movie to be real. Obviously, of course, outside of doing the drugs, but of course you don't want to injure an animal on set for just a movie. So obviously PETA's there on set, and they had 2 goldfish PETA consultants, I believe. They had goldfish
animal trainers,
handlers. Yeah. So they had goldfish handlers on set during the goldfish scene. So Jonah Hill could only keep the goldfish in his mouth for
3 seconds.
3 seconds at a time. Then they had to spit it out each time. So they couldn't actually do that. And he also got punched by John Barenthal for real in that scene on the roof where they're screaming at each other, and Scorsese told John to actually hit Jonah Hill. Let's do a scene where he actually hit him. And Jonah Hill said he was shaking in his boots, ready for the scene to go, and then did it. And he said it was his favorite scene to shoot.
It actually broke his teeth. The fake teeth he was wearing, they broke in half from the punch. And Scorsese immediately set up the next shot of him falling on the ground as soon as possible because he wanted to capture his cheeks swelling up perfectly and not let it go down at all.
Yeah, and Jonah Hill also had an audible lisp from wearing those fake teeth to play Donnie. To get rid of it, he'd spend hours on the phone calling random businesses and talk with them just to get rid of it and to learn to talk without it.
And the thing with Scorsese is he's made some of the greatest films of all time, and he is one of the most respected, if not the most respected American director of all time. But I think it would surprise a lot of people to know that he allows a lot of improvisation in all of his films, and he always has. And he thinks that when you have a great actor performing for you, they can bring as much to the table as you because they're great artists and they've thought about the character more than the filmmaker has, you know what I mean? And so he encourages improvisation, and I think my favorite case of improvisation in this film is Matthew McConaughey's scene when he has that lunch with Jordan Belfort in the opening of the film, and they start doing that chest beating scene. So that is a completely improvised addition to the scene. And what happened was that chest beating thing it's a vocal warm-up that McConaughey does before he acts in all of his scenes for any movie. It gets his voice range correct and it calms him down. It's just an exercise he always does, repeats before every scene. And before they were shooting and the shot was set up, DiCaprio saw McConaughey doing this chest beating thing, and he thought it was really interesting and could work in the scene. And so he suggested it to Scorsese, and Scorsese was like, "Yeah, throw it in the scene. Let's see what happens." And so they included it into the scene, had a lot of fun with it, and improvised with it. And it is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire movie.
Yeah, you can just tell watching so many of these scenes that a ton of it is improvised or ad-libbed, and I think the script is so great because it balances the complexity of the stock market and what happened with these wild stories and incredible humor, and specifically that scene where Donnie is telling Jordan at dinner about marrying his cousin. It's absolutely hysterical. It's like a 2.5 minute scene. It has nothing to do with the story, has nothing to do with the plot of the movie, but it really gets you to know these characters and it's weird. You like these characters despite all the debauchery they're doing and all the illegal activity and basically stealing from people. And another example is when Brad is lifting weights in the backyard and he's telling the teenagers to tell their sisters. He says hi. It's hysterical stuff that, again, it doesn't move the plot forward, but we get to know the characters better.
Hey, Mom, we getting chicken for dinner or what?
We got chicken tonight, Ma.
And in terms of the filmmaking itself, I think, like I said, Scorsese put so much energy into the filmmaking, and also he shot half digital, half film with this movie. So anything that's set in the offices or in daylight, that's shot in film, and all of the night sequences are shot digitally, and you can actually see the framing smooths a little bit. The 24 frames per second, you can kind of see how it smooths a little bit compared to the actual 24 frames per second on film. And on top of that, a lot of this movie was shot with green screens, like gigantic green screen scenes that you wouldn't be able to tell in order to save money to produce this. And so some of my favorite shots that are completely CGI created shots or filmed in front of big green screens are Jordan's beachside home is made through CGI. All of the yacht sequences are shot in studio with green screens. The docks are shot in front of a green screen. The tennis courts at the prison at the end, that shot was made through CGI. The lion in the office in the opening of the film, that was shot with green screen. And the wedding on the beach, it was all CGI. And then pretty much every window in the offices, that's all green screen. They just digitally put in background. So I think this is the most, aside from Hugo, the most CGI that Scorsese's put into a movie.
And Shutter Island. There's a lot of green screen and CGI in Shutter Island.
Yeah.
And also, this movie is the first film, and I think the only film that Martin Scorsese has made that has a shot used with an iPhone to capture. And so I think they were filming the airplane scene after Jordan Belfort gets
the sex
tied.
on the plane?
Yeah, when he's humping the flight attendant. Yeah. And so they needed a pickup shot of the flight attendant light, and it was like, I think, the end of the day, and they didn't have enough time or money to set up their rig that they needed to in the cameras to get the shot real quick. And so they just, one of the producers or someone on set just got video with their iPhone. And then Scorsese saw it. He's like, "Yeah, that's fine. We can use that. That's fine."
Yeah, he knows he doesn't have to be perfect. He's not like David Fincher in that way, where it's like it's going to be there for a second, and it's just a quick cut. So as long as the audience sees what it is, it's fine. It's good enough,
and no one will know.
Yeah, no one will know. And I think this movie has the most sex in any other Scorsese movie by far. Like, there's so much sex in this movie, it's crazy. And he had to cut it down a lot of nudity and graphic scenes because it got an NC-17 rating at first. And we're talking about a movie that has like a giant orgy on an airplane. It's absolutely ridiculous, the stuff in this movie.
There are multiple orgies in this movie.
Yeah, it's so funny.
The gay orgy when they come back to the apartment and they're sweet. It's hysterical.
Their butler's like, "Oh, he's acting surprised."
It's
like,
Wednesday
what are
already?
You doing?
This movie, it's hysterical. And a cool fact about A Wolf of Wall Street is there are multiple directors in acting roles in this movie. Obviously, Rob Reiner, who plays Jordan Belfort's father, and then Spike Jonze plays the penny stock manager at that tiny firm that Jordan goes to work for. And obviously, Spike Jonze is known for Her. He's the guy who filmed all the Jackass and directed those movies and everything. Mm-hmm. And then Jon Favreau, we all know,
played the lawyer.
And then Jonah Hill is also a director now. So there's 4 pretty prominent directors in this movie, as actors.
And Rob Reiner, he's old friends with Scorsese, but he made Stand By Me, and he's done a couple other Stephen King movies. So a great filmmaker as well. And he's so funny, like when he changes accents when he's on the phone.
Yeah,
they call him the Equalizer. And this movie, it's long.
It's long.
It's 2.5 hours, I think a little more actually, but it flies by because it's endlessly entertaining. And the thing with Scorsese is it's very much like Goodfellas, and you can compare it to The Irishman as well, where this movie, these 3 movies, there's so many scenes. There's so many freaking scenes in those 3 movies, Goodfellas, Irishman, and Wolf of Wall Street. Scorsese is able to shoot so quickly. It's unbelievable if you've seen behind the scenes. Like, they're shooting 3, 4, 5 scenes in a single day. I don't know how many scenes are in this movie. It's got to be over 70 scenes. And it's just amazing how much coverage he can get. And because he's not like Kubrick or Fincher, where it has to be perfect. We're doing take after take after take. Like, once he feels it's right, he's like, okay, good, let's cut, let's move on, let's get the next shot. And so by injecting so many scenes into a movie that's this long, it doesn't feel that long.
Yeah, and also each scene, pretty much, in a lot of these shots, they're packed with information. And I think one of my favorite examples of this is the scene where Jordan's in Switzerland with the Swiss banker. And the way they shot this is behind the Swiss banker is this fish tank, a small fish tank, and there's a bunch of fish swimming around. And then behind Jordan in the background, he's like sitting like what he thinks and feels like obviously he feels like a king on a throne, and behind him is a giant lake or a giant pond. And Jordan thinks that he's a big fish in a small pond, but really to the Swiss banker, Jordan is a small fish in a big pond with all these other fish, so he's not as important as he thinks. And I think there's shots like this that Martin Scorsese just really symbolically shows you the characters and what their personalities are really like, and it's really smart and clever.
And also, like, the editing in this film is kind of like all over the place, especially to make you feel like you're in Jordan's shoes and mentality, because he's always high on drugs or messed up or something. And he does amazing cuts, like when he shows Naomi the yacht he bought her. Scorsese just cuts for 30 seconds like this cheesy, like, infomercial advertisement of the interior of the yacht, like an ad of it, and it's just. And he also does like that cheesy advertisement for the company in the opening of the film. Like, he injects so much information in a fun and unique way with the editing. It keeps you like entertained and invested in the film as it's going along.
In the Stratton Oakmont, the firm itself, it feels like a character in the movie because of how unique and wild and exciting and crazy it is, and all these men and women who become a part of this. It's like a living organism or community of excess and illegality. And there's so many scenes where the firm's acting like, you watch it, they're acting like a group of apes or like a group of animals, grunting and screaming and fighting and having sex. And it's just like, it seems like humanity goes backwards in time in evolution when they're at this firm in a way. It's just crazy interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And then obviously this was Margot Robbie's big breakout movie.
So good in this movie.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And after this movie, she just like exploded with like 5 movies back to back to back. And I think her biggest scene is probably the seduction scene where she seduces Jordan Belfort. And it's funny because he's trying to, in his head, you hear his inner monologue, and he's always like, she's like, how do I get into her apartment? And like, then how do I stay here? And she's just like making it happen without him doing anything. And there's this famous reveal where she enters her living room and she's nude. Originally, Scorsese offered to let Margot Robbie perform the scene with a robe on and not be fully nude because he didn't want her to feel uncomfortable or objectified. But Margot Robbie, being the smart and talented actor she is and understanding her character, she insisted on doing the scene nude because she felt that her character, the only money she has in the world is her body, and she uses that as her leverage in these situations, so she has to be nude in the situation. And so I think kudos to Margot Robbie for like understanding her character that much and really sticking to her guns and having the courage to be able to do that nude, even though she was asked not to.
And the film, obviously, we all know, ends with Jordan Belfort being arrested and indicted and going to jail.
And it gets very intense where he tries to like kidnap his daughter, basically, and he crashes the car. And
it's very dark.
He has a very dark downfall in this movie. It takes a turn.
But again, it ends with him doing his speeches and his presentations, and we learn now, if you look the guy up, the guy's very wealthy again. So these stock market guys, these Wall Street guys, they just kind of they just get a slap on the wrist. They go to a fancy prison for a few years and they pay some fines and they're good to go. Even John Favreau, the lawyer, is like, you just pay some fines with the SEC and that'll be it really, and you'll be fine. But it's nuts how they get away with it. Leonardo DiCaprio explained to Ellen DeGeneres that during the Quaalude sequence where Donnie's choking, it took them 70 takes just to get the ham to stick to his face, and they achieved it by flicking the ham off a spoon and using KY jelly in order to make it sticky enough.
It's amazing when you hear something like that, because if you look at DiCaprio's face, he is so in the scene, into it. And imagine having to do that 70 times with it just not working. And on top of that, they're trying to stick ham to your face. So
and there's KY jelly flying into your eye.
It's just amazing when you hear that and you can see his commitment to the scene. It's just unbelievable. This guy deserves everything he gets.
On a routine set visit, Steven Spielberg spent a day on set watching the shoot of the Steve Madden speech. Martin Scorsese claims that Spielberg essentially co-directed the scene, giving advice to actors and suggesting camera angles. Steve Madden.
Matthew McConaughey can be seen gaining weight in this movie because he had just come off of filming Dallas Buyers Club, in which he lost 47 pounds for. And so once he started filming this movie, he began eating normally again. And you can tell in his few short scenes that his weight is is fluctuating.
Yeah, he's definitely super thin in the first scenes he did. Next up, The Big Short, released in 2015. Written and directed by Adam McKay. In 2006 and 2007, a group of investors bet against the U.S. mortgage market. In their research, they discover how flawed and corrupt the market is.
I think Adam McKay is such a talented director, and a lot of people before this and Vice came out, I don't think they were aware of it because he had just made, comedies with Will Ferrell like Talladega Nights and the other guys, which he also put in a lot of financial scrutiny in as well. But he's incredibly talented. He shoots with film. His Vice and in this film are really beautiful films, and you can see that he is an extremely smart person, and he tries to tackle complex themes and put them into movies that audiences can understand and also be entertained by, which I think this movie does. And Adam McKay actually got his start on SNL, and he was an SNL writer, and he and Will Ferrell met on SNL, and they both began a collaboration back then where they wrote the sketches together. So many of Will Ferrell's most famous characters and sketches from SNL, Adam McKay helped create. which is why they have had this long-standing relationship for so long.
Not to mention, Will Ferrell and Adam McKay both are the co-founders of Funny or Die, so they've been doing this for decades, basically. And this is the first film that solidified Adam McKay as a great director because, like you said, he doesn't need Will Ferrell to make a movie, and he has something important to say as a filmmaker because he's tackling these important topics. Because what happened in 2008 when the market crashed and we went into this recession it was horrible, it was terrible, and no one really understood what happened, and a lot of Americans' lives were changed forever, and hopefully they've been able to bounce back in the time being. But the thing with it is it came and went, and no one seemed to really care anymore about it. No one's talking about it anymore.
And it's kind of happening again, too.
And I think what Adam McKay wanted to do with this movie is realize that something really serious happened, and it's happening again, which obviously they tell you at the end of the film with those final chyrons and those quotes. And it was a shock for me when it came out and I saw this movie because, I mean, I'm not saying that Adam McKay wasn't already a talented director, like you said. I mean, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, Anchorman, as ridiculous and funny as those movies are, they're really well directed and really well executed.
Yeah. They're beautiful films. And like we said earlier, Adam McKay uses a few tools to explain what happened because it's very complicated and it's very confusing, especially if you have no familiarity with the financial sector at all. And so he uses, like we said, he breaks the fourth wall a lot. He uses celebrities to explain things to us because it keeps us more engaged. He uses things like the Jenga scene with Ryan Gosling, and he'll show us actual tables and graphs at the end credits and stuff. And so he makes, it's like he's a teacher to students, and he's like trying to teach us something very complicated in a dumbed down way for just an average American to understand.
And again, like we talked about earlier in the stock market and how they kind of all want to keep it a secret. They don't want all these people to know how it works and operates. The same kind of thing happened here. And this is Adam McKay trying to explain how these loans worked and what happened. And this movie won Best Screenplay Oscar, which it deserved because it's a really well-written script. The cast in this movie is absurd. Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Marissa Tomei, Jeremy Strong, Melissa Leo, Selena Gomez, Karen Gillan, and a cameo from Anthony Bourdain. That's insane. And most of these actors, they're playing real people in an honest way, which is why I think this film it feels more authentic than Wolf of Wall Street, because again, Wolf of Wall Street, great movie, but it's just all roller coaster energy, emotion, and we're following this one character. But now we're basically following three storylines of these characters, played by Christian Bale, Steve Carell, and Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant way to tell a story because, for example, Jared Vennett, Ryan Gosling's character, he pitches Steve Carell his option of buying, and then also Christian Bale, his character Michael Berry, goes from bank to bank asking for loans in order to buy into the short bet. And so because of these two characters, they're pretty much explaining what's happening in their meetings and pitches with the other characters. And so it becomes a situation where it's exposition, but it's also vital to the plot because they're explaining what's happening to us, the audience, while trying to get investments from the other characters. So it's a brilliant way to tell the story.
And I think this movie showcases how good of an actor Christian Bale really is and how much of a chameleon he is for even just normal people's lives. And I mean, obviously Ryan Gosling, Steve Carell, high talent guys, but Christian Bale, he's on a stratosphere compared to these dudes. I mean, he's
playing a different sport.
He takes his roles so seriously, and he's such a chameleon, and like he is Michael Burry in this movie. And Michael Burry is a really fascinating character and guy. He's a trained physician, very stunted social skills. He's a genius analyst and number cruncher, and he runs this very successful West Coast hedge fund. And he also has a glass eye, which they actually did in post-production. They
CGI,
frame by frame, they went in and made that glass eye look like an actual glass eye on Christian Bale's face. He has this habit where he plays the drums, and Christian Bale learned to play the drums in 2 weeks for this role. And it's just a fascinating take. I mean, he doesn't wear suits. He wears shorts and sweatshirts.
He wears cargo shorts and a T-shirt.
And flip-flops.
And Christian Bale actually borrowed Michael Burry's real clothes for this movie. He borrowed those cargo shorts and that T-shirt actually belonged to Michael Burry, and they had a meeting, and he asked, hey, can you send me your clothes so I can wear in the film? And also, Michael Burry, for as wealthy he is, like hundreds of millions of dollars in wealth, he still gets his haircut at Supercuts for $8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just a very fascinating character. And Christian Bale, once again, he just disappears because you know it's Christian Bale, but it's not just the look, it's the behavior. It's how he carries himself and how he speaks. And like once again, he proves time and time again that he really is one of the most talented actors of all time.
And so Burry, after he finds this terrifying data,
he's one of the first people to discover the bubble.
Yeah, with these mortgage bonds, he concocts that idea to short and bet against the housing bond market.
Yeah, so he goes from bank to bank asking for loans, and he eventually gathers over $1 billion worth of loans.
And the interesting thing about his character, as well as the crisis is starting and people are thinking they're going to lose all their money and everything, and they don't understand what Michael Burry's doing. They're screaming at him on the phone to give him their money, and like all his clients want their money back. They're like, "Give me my money! I want my money right now!" And what ends up happening is he makes them more money than they could have ever imagined having in their entire lives, and it ends up he was right. And the great thing about this movie, again, we're dealing with these characters who we talked about earlier. They're making a profit off something horrible, but dealing with the turmoil that comes with that, and the morality of it. Is it the right thing to do? But what else would you do? What would you do if you were in their shoes? Everyone would do it.
The ship's on fire, and what Burry did pretty much was he got this loan of over $1 billion from a few banks, and he invested in the short, and the value rose. And so he sold off on a high value, made a huge profit, and then they dropped in value exponentially because of the crisis, and he bought them back. And so over time, those rose again. So when they rose again after he bought them back, he pocketed all of that money. And so that's how he earned like over $100 million just for himself. And then again, his investors, they earned well over hundreds of millions.
And then Steve Carell, Adam McKay's buddy from Anchorman, I like Lamp. He has a role of Mark Baum, who's a manager of a hedge fund, and they get whiff of what of Ryan Gosling's character Vennett's
Jared,
doing. And he wants a piece of the action as well. And basically, he's more of a He seems like he has high morals, and he wants to do it in a way to kind of like it's like a screw the system kind of thing. That he's more of an idealist, you could say, in terms of these hedge fund managers. And he actually has like positive morals.
And his character, so he's based off a real person. Jared Vennett is a fictional character, but he's based off a real person. And this guy worked for banks, and he saw clues and hints to the bubble happening, but no one would believe him. And so that's why he went to Mark Baum to partner up in purchasing these credit default swaps to make a profit off of them, because he personally didn't have enough money to buy enough, and so that's why he went to Mark Baum, because Mark Baum's firm had enough money to be able to buy a sizable sum of these defaults in order to make a gigantic profit.
Yeah, and one of the most powerful scenes for Steve Carell's character Mark Baum is at the end when he finally decides to tell his guys to sell. He's going through a lot emotionally because he knows what's going to happen. He knows all these people are going to lose so much money. They're going to lose their houses, their jobs. And he understands that they knew it was going to happen. They knew this would happen. And he's about to make a decision to make a ton of money off the loss of everyone else's money.
Yeah. And the thing is, everyone's still going to lose their money. So he doesn't have to lose any of his money. He can make money. So I think pretty much everyone will make that same decision.
Again,
where
this is their job.
The ship's going down.
This is these guys' jobs, and their job is to make as much money as possible, and their job is to exploit weaknesses or try to profit off opportunities, and that's what they do.
And that's what shorting is, and that's what happens. Kind of happening with the situation in Wall Street right now, where, for example, like GameStop and Nokia and AMC, where these people on this Reddit stream, they're shorting these companies and buying into them big time.
Short squeezing
them. And so that's exactly what happened with this movie, where these characters are short squeezing the situation because they know everything's going to collapse. So let's just squeeze it and pull as much money out of it as we can right now before it falls down.
And now it's interesting to see in real life how people are doing this in a massive way, as opposed to just Wall Street doing it to companies every day.
Yeah.
And then I really like Brad Pitt's performance in this role too, as Ben Rickard. And Rickard is like this former banker and stockbroker in a way, but he seems to have put that all behind him. He's kind of like has this hippie mentality. He grows his own food, and he's like, "Oh, you guys got to start growing your own food. You just have to urinate on your soil for a couple weeks." And then he's almost like a do-gooder now, and he comes back into the game to help these two characters, played by Finn Whatrock and John Magaro, also profit off what's about to happen. And he kind of just plugs back in and he seems he's been out of the game. But it's interesting that a character who leaves this kind of industry and then comes back, and then even after he succeeds and gets them all this money and this profit after beating the system, you can see kind of like a look of disgust.
You can tell why he left it.
Yeah, he seems disappointed in himself.
Brad Pitt's actually one of the main producers on this film with his Plan B Productions, and his production company has made a ton of great films, including a bunch of Oscar winners like 12 Years a Slave. And I think he's used his power and his celebrity to help great filmmakers get their films made. So he's become a very important producer in Hollywood. I love how you mentioned earlier this film shows the irresponsibility of people on Wall Street. So, for example, when Mark Baum and his firm, they go out in the field and they visit those bankers who are selling mortgages, and in these young guys who are issuing mortgages to people, like they're bragging about how these mortgages are horrible and they're absolute dog shit and they're gonna probably default, and they don't care because they're getting a big commission every time they issue one. And you can see Mark Baum and his associates, how the look on their faces in disbelief that these people have no idea the repercussions that are the fallout that all of this behavior is going to cause, because it happened for decades. This built up this kind of irrational, crazy behavior of irresponsibility driven by greed that these people had, and they couldn't have cared less about the little person or the average American. All they cared about was profiting as much as they could. And things like this happen because of deregulation and the lack of laws in the industry. And so obviously people are going to be driven to make as much money as they can. And the way they make money is by issuing these mortgages because they get commissions. And if there's no regulation on what the mortgage has to look like, and if you're not regulating who can apply for these mortgages and who can be accepted, then it causes this gigantic stratosphere to build up and then eventually collapse.
Yeah, everything crashes, and then the main characters literally make boatloads of money. And Michael Burry, after battling his clients to not sell them, give them their money, makes his clients wealthier than they'd ever imagine. The recession cripples the entire country and other countries as well, and people lose their homes, their jobs, their lives. It's an odd emotion for these characters. The only happy ones seem to be those young investors, those two guys, because I don't think they're old enough or mature enough to understand what just happened. And yes, you got a ton of money, but do you understand how this has affected everybody else? And even Vennet, who I look at as sort of like a hitman kind of for money and cash, he seems like he seems most similar to Jordan Belfort character in a way, but obviously way toned down. But he's the only one out of all these people that kind of has that vibe and aesthetic too.
Yeah, he has that speech where he's like, "You smell that? It's money. I smell money. I'm here to make money." And so it's a great film detailing what happened through the eyes and perspectives of people who were not involved in the cause of the collapse, but they were involved in profiting off the collapse, which are different things, but also, you can't say that they're good people for what they did, but they did what they had to. And I think it was just a brilliant way to tell a story. And it's important not to have like outside voices, like you didn't hear from anyone who's not in the industry, and to be able to be behind the closed doors of what these situations were like, it was just endlessly fascinating.
And I think if there's a weakness to this film, obviously it's hard to understand for like your first time viewing, second time viewing, especially if you have no familiarity with economics or how loans work or
it's
how
confusing
stock market
stuff.
works. It's pretty confusing stuff, and I know Adam McKay tries to do his best with the celebrities and like Margot Robbie in the bubble bath and Selena Gomez and Anthony Bourdain. But still, it still is hard to grasp, I think, your first time viewing, even second time viewing. And you kind of have to do a little research to really, truly understand what happens in the film and what happened in real life.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why it happens is because many of us are unawares. We have no idea what's going on. We hardly understand a loan itself. And there's so much fine print. There's so many things involved in just taking out a mortgage. And when you take out a mortgage, you don't know what's going to happen. You think that, I'm working with this bank and they're giving me this mortgage or this loan for me to like start a business or pay for a house. But we don't know that this bank is selling that mortgage right behind our backs to a firm. and they're making money off of us on top of that. And it's just this whole system that has become so like a wild, wild west in a type of way, where no one gets disciplined, everyone makes money, and then people like average Americans, they lose out on it. And it's a corrupt environment, and I think that if more young people educate themselves and learn more about it, maybe in time things can change forever, but we'll see.
It's really all about that, and also just electing the right people to make laws, because that's how this happens. Is the politicians get in there, the wrong politicians, and they don't regulate, and they let this happen. They cause this. A lot of people cause these to happen.
Yeah, it's not just one thing.
You can guarantee that there's probably going to be something like this happening again pretty soon, because Adam McKay basically teases at the end of the film that there are these new kinds of loans that
they changed the name.
They just basically changed the name, and so it's happening again. And who knows what's going to happen right now with AMC and GME and what's going on in the stock market right now. And I'm sure, and again, there was some more illegal activity over the weekend, and so it's a wild time to see what's going on. But it's kind of fascinating to see how now there's power in this massive amount of wealth coming to people, everyday people online in Reddit, and now they're getting a taste of this power, and they're trying to fight back, and it's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think it's because we've always seen that Wall Street as this Goliath that can never be touched or even scratched, and then I think this past week has showed us that if enough people get together, they can cause a lot of destruction in that industry, because they have the masses as opposed to a very small handful. And
power of the internet.
Yeah, power of the internet. And so we'll see what happens in the future. I'm keeping my eye on it. It's very interesting stuff, and I'm so curious to see what happens.
AMC to the moon, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
But yeah, these are great films. I think Wall Street is a fascinating place to tell stories, and obviously it's going to be a lot of villainous characters. But if you have the right filmmakers, it's going to be entertaining, educational, and a good time as well.
Yeah, and Adam McKay, again, he humanizes these characters who we think are always villains, because they're not always villains, and there are some honest people out there. But thank you so much for tuning into this Wall Street episode.
I hope you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, I hope you like our suits.
Yeah, we look pretty sharp. I mean, I look real good in the suit. I mean, I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, you said that to yourself as you were looking in the mirror 12 times.
I mean, have you seen me in a suit?
Go to YouTube to find out.
Bye. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost podcast. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Listen to the audio format of Raiders of the Lost podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes every Monday and Thursday. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast.